All right. Happy Monday. So today we're going to start chapter 13, and we're gonna like last week, there are 59 slides, so there won't be that many. We're gonna cover, I think, 22 today. Um, and then next week we have a class on Monday only, and we will meet, but it will not be for lecture. It's an optional meeting, just like every other class, but it's not going to be. We're not going to start chapter 14 because we're not going to quiz on it. Uh, so it'll be the week after Thanksgiving break that we'll cover chapter 14. That'll be our final chapter before final exam week. So it'll be 13 this week, nothing next week as far as chapters, and then 14, chapter 14 the week before final exam week. Any questions about that? Your final exam will be chapters 1 through 14. But there will not be a separate exam on chapters 13 and 14. Final exam is worth no more than any other exam. So that makes a total of 4 exams. Each exam is worth 15% of your final grade. Your quizzes collectively are worth 40%. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Um, Bob mentioned earlier that he did well on the exam, but there were a few questions that he thought were hard to find, difficult to find, and maybe it was the wording, and that's why he couldn't find exactly what they were looking for. Did anyone else have an opinion on the exam? We can't go over it because it's still not due until midnight, and many people haven't taken it. But
I also thought that some of the wording on a couple were rough.
okay, I'd like to go over the exam on Wednesday.
I did get a good grade, but I was hoping to get a better grade.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few that I think I just kind of overthought.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What usually happens?
Natasha, it's weird because she's muted, but I can hear her good.
I think she remuted herself.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, it's better than it's been. I can tell you that.
yeah.
Because I switched rooms.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, that makes sense.
Mhm.
All right. Emotion, stress, and health. What is emotion? A state of arousal involving facial and bodily changes. They specifically mention facial changes and bodily changes, brain activation, cognitive appraisals, meaning what we decide, what we conclude is happening, subjective feelings, meaning personal feelings, like as in uh, uh, they are unique to you, and tendencies toward action. And all of these are shaped by cultural rules. So it's going to include the three primary areas uh, of concern to psychologists. So the physiological changes, how the body responds organically, organ, like your heart, your respiratory rate, um, cognitive processes, as in what about your thoughts, and then lastly, uh, the cultural influences on um, not just what emotions we experience, but how we express them, who expresses them, when we are able to express them, and where. All of these are shaped by our culture. But it's important, again, I'm going to mention this again. When looking at the definition of emotion, it's a state of arousal That means there's some activation happening that involves facial and bodily changes. Facial. They're specifically calling out our expression of emotion using our faces. Bob's still writing, so I'll give it a minute. There's no rush. Okay, so which of the following do you think is a primary emotion? Love, suspicion, joy, or jealousy? Now, before you
Jealousy.
answer, think about what you're born with. What is an emotion that you're born with?
Joy.
Joy. Exactly. We have 6 primary emotions, 6 universal emotions, and you'll see that there are 7 up there, like pictures. That's because they're trying to throw in a 7th one, but we always say that there are at least 6. So what does the first one look like? What is this?
Surprise.
Yes, surprise. What about this one?
Yucky.
Disgust. Good. What about this one?
Um,
Emotion.
Sadness.
Sadness. This one.
Anger.
Anger. This one.
surprise.
No.
Shock.
Fear.
Fear. Okay.
And then this one.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Happiness, joy. And then the last one they're trying to throw in. So those are the 6. Surprise, disgust, sadness, anger, fear, joy. And they're trying to throw this one in. It's called contempt.
Disappointment.
Yeah, disappointment, contempt. Right. Where you're looking
So
down
you
on
said-
someone.
There was 6 primary emotions and 6. What else did you say?
There are 6 universal or primary emotions. They're trying to throw this 7th one in, contempt.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
That's what the 7th one is here. But these are for sure, no matter who you ask, are the 6. What is the difference between surprise and fear?
Adrenaline. I don't know.
Surprise is associated with a little bit happiness.
Surprise doesn't have to lead to happiness. Could also lead to anger, could lead to fear, could lead to sadness. The difference between surprise and fear is there's an evaluation that you understand you're in danger. Here, you just know something is startling you, as in something is arousing you. You haven't really appraised what is happening, if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Surprise is.
That
What did
was-
you say about surprise?
It was just a discussion point. I was just making
Oh.
conversation while you were writing stuff down. Okay. The facial feedback hypothesis, the facial feedback idea is that our face is so strongly linked to our experience of emotion. That is to say that our face responds to our emotions without us having to think about it. So there's a very strong link between what's going on in our brain, what our emotion is, and how we're expressing it in our face. The feedback hypothesis is that it's so strongly linked that you can make the face and it feeds back to the brain and tells the brain what your emotion is. So you can smile and it will mimic essentially happiness, and it feeds back to the brain. The nerves that attach themselves to the muscles in our face go up to the brain where it's controlled and says, hey, you're making a smiley face, you're happy. So what does it mean? It means essentially that our ancestors relied so much, because we're a social species, so much on expressions of our emotions before language existed, that we had to be able to communicate to others of our species what we were feeling. And it was a form of honest communication. Like, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm afraid. Okay. It was so important in order to maintain our relationships with each other, that we evolved to have our facial expressions hardwired to what's actually happening in the brain. It's not enough to say, well, that's an interesting fact. Look at that. You know, if I tell my child, who's upset, to smile, and look at, now they're in a better mood just by smiling. No, that's interesting. It's not enough to know something interesting. But if we delve deeper into it, we begin to understand better the function of it and how it evolved. So, doesn't matter where you are in the world, happiness is always expressed the same way. They're universal. And when something is culturally universal,
Oh,
it means
is
that it
that
has to
true?
be, it means that it has to have evolved.
Is
It
that
means
bottom part true?
yes, obviously.
That's amazing. I think.
Yeah. And so again, we look at the interesting fact. All right, infants are able to recognize parental expressions and adjust their behavior accordingly. Okay, that's interesting. Delve deeper. If this is the case, why? What's the function? Like, what does that mean? Hammer.
What up?
If
Oh.
if a parent smiles at the infant,
Thank you.
Robert?
what's the baby gonna do? What's the infant
No, you
gonna
miss,
do?
buddy.
Thank you.
How we going?
You too.
He smiles back.
Yeah.
Mine do.
Why?
I don't know. They're happy that I'm happy.
Why? What is it doing? What's the function? What's the purpose?
Learning.
To adjust the behavior accordingly.
What's the purpose of adjusting the behavior, though? What's the goal?
to happiness, make your parents happy.
To make your parents
Attachment.
happy. What's the ultimate goal?
To stay attached.
Connection.
What's the ultimate goal? What's our ultimate goal?
to be conform to the social rule.
The ultimate goal, I've told you, is always going to be the same. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. Doesn't matter if we're talking about brushing our teeth or going to the bathroom. The ultimate goal is always going to be the same. Ultimate. And that's survival. It's survival of the species. How does this behavior help the species survive? I think we all got a case of the Mondays here.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
I just realized it. Took my makeup off already. Look like shit. My hair's just jagged.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well, I was gonna say something, but
I'm
Smiling.
telling you that there's a function to this. There's a benefit to us having this ability as infants. It serves a purpose. If a baby coos, like that little coo, little high pitched thing, what does that do?
it draws your attention.
Exactly. It draws your attention. It's the baby's
Aid.
way of saying, hey, give me attention. Now, why is attention important?
To provide their needs
Okay.
in some way.
Yep. And so by soliciting their attention, what are they doing? They're forming a bond. They're forming an attachment. By having the bond and the attachment formed, now the needs are provided. Once the needs are provided, survival is happening. Survival is the goal on the individual. Why? Because you want the offspring eventually to grow up and make more of itself. Everything serves the same purpose. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you're working for a construction company that pays roads or lines them, or washing dishes at a restaurant. It all serves the same ultimate goal, and that is survival. Everything you do serves the same purpose, and that is survival. Facial feedback hypothesis suggests that if you smile, your mood will become more positive also. True. All right. We have regions of the brain that we call association areas that serve specific functions, or we'll leave it at that. Yep, serve specific functions. So the left prefrontal cortex, so it's the outer portion of the frontal lobe, left side, is involved in motivation to approach others. Damage to it results in a loss of joy. The right prefrontal cortex is involved in withdrawal and escape, or fear. The opposite. I may ask you this in a question. I probably won't, because I think it's pretty specific. Trying to figure out and remember which one is the left or is it the right. One left is approach and the right is escape. I don't think I'll do that, but the lesson here on this slide really is that different parts of the brain regulate different functions. That's it. You knew this already, but even our emotions Any questions? As mentioned before in chapter 4, the amygdala, emotion. When we think of the amygdala, we think of emotion. Specifically, it's responsible for assessing danger or threat. If you have damage to the amygdala, it results in an abnormality in processing fear. You don't experience it. It's not just for, the experiencing of the emotion, but also emotional memories. All right, so you're cleaning out a closet when suddenly a large spider jumps on your hand. You scream in fear. This is going to be the amygdala. Just a repeat in the form of a question. Empathy. The feeling that you have as though you were going through it by watching someone else to go through it, by watching someone else going through it. Someone's going through something bad, and you feel for them. That's empathy. These are regulated by something called mirror neurons. They're nicknamed empathy neurons. So these are brain cells that fire when a person or animal observes others carrying out an action. They're involved in empathy, imitation, and reading emotions. It's like when you watch a stand-up comedian and they start laughing at their own jokes, you start laughing. When someone's angry, you get angry. These mirror
So
neurons are,
animals have this as well?
yeah, not all. The more complex, I
Like
don't want to say
primate?
higher, I don't want to say higher versus lower functioning, but yeah. Like dogs can recognize emotions. So it's far more evolved and varied in humans than in other animals. And these help us recognize others' intentions and are involved in emotional contagion, which is what I just described to you. That when you see someone else or a group of other people experiencing an emotion, you start to feel the same thing. These mirror neurons turn off when we watch our enemies, though, or members of outgroups. We feel less empathy for people in outgroups. Mirror neurons are not only for emotion, it says imitation as well. So if you were watching something on TV or on your computer and you see someone get punched in the gut, you're going to go, oh, look at that a little bit. Well, you didn't get punched in the gut. Why are you tensing up? Those are due to mirror neurons. Tasha's going to let some light in. She's going to grab a glass. She's a little thirsty. Good. Let's all follow along here. Just going to walk over to the other side. Go into the fridge. Yep. Pull out some sort of container, probably Kool-Aid, maybe cherry flavored, because she knows that's the best.
Oh yeah.
And she's sitting back down, and there she is. Oh no, something.
The cranberry juice. She about to do a TikTok.
I like cranberry juice. The
You're gonna sleep
energy
with
of
the lights on.
emotion. When we experience an intense emotion, two hormones are released, adrenaline and noradrenaline. This results in increased alertness and arousal. At high levels, it can create a sensation of being out of control emotionally. But we know that hormones are only part of the physiological puzzle, as different emotions can trigger different brain activity. Right? So depression versus, surprise. Surprise, you're going to have, a lot of adrenaline, noradrenaline. Fear, same thing.
Is this? Hmm,
Yes, it is. It always is.
I had a feeling.
Yeah. No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's okay. I can fill in the blanks. I got this.
Okay.
Yeah. You had me a little bit confused there for a sec.
Well, when we're experiencing an intense emotion, adrenaline is released, and at high levels, it can make us feel out of control. But we know that hormones are only a small part of it, of what emotions, our emotional response, our emotional experience. Because we have not just the physiological effects, we also have the behavioral and the cognitive.
This is what I'm thinking of is like women being like more clingy because they release more epinephrine or norepinephrine
No,
when
no. Women will, if you're talking about like the
I'm
attachments
talking
formed.
about intimacy and
Mhm.
how I'm talking about how like women and intimacy and being like more,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
The
I don't know.
leading theory that explains that, there are a couple different things that explain that. An evolutionary approach would say, well, it benefited the females of our species to make sure that they were very loyal. Instead of, I'm not going to use the word clingy, but you know what I mean. We'll call it loyal.
Um,
This was to ensure the male that if she got pregnant, that the offspring, he knew it was his. Therefore, he'd provide his resources. If she was not loyal, if she was not clingy, then if she did get pregnant, then the male wouldn't know. So he's like, no, I don't know. You've been hanging around with John too. Okay. So, what are the processes that led to the development of this? We also know that when women have an orgasm, they release twice as much oxytocin.
okay, so it's
Oxytocin,
oxytocin.
huh?
It's oxytocin that I'm thinking of, not epinephrine.
That's right. It's oxytocin that's released when a woman experiences an orgasm and when a man experiences an orgasm, but a woman releases twice as much when she does. And oxytocin paired with vasopressin are what facilitates bonding between individuals. And then there's the cultural influence. So now we have the evolutionary, we have the biological, and now we have the cultural. Women are more than men interdependent. They are more reliant on others in defining who they are. I am daughter of, I am wife of, I am mother of, almost in a collectivistic kind of way. Whereas the males in our culture, specifically our culture, it is emphasized and supported and nurtured that males of our culture become independent.
Like head of the household.
Yes, the males in our culture, you reach a certain age, it is expected that you leave by a certain age the home, and it may not even be stated, and it may not even be said, but it is just a cultural implicit norm that our daughters can stay home longer than our sons. When you look back in time and you look back at your parents, there's a good chance that your mother stayed home longer. There's a chance that your mother stayed home longer before getting it on with your dad, who had left home earlier. It's just a traditional cultural thing. So, what does that mean? It means that the cultural influences of how a woman is expected based on her social roles, how she's supposed to think, feel, and act. And that's why I said earlier, when it comes to emotions, our culture will determine who can express what, where, when, and how. And that boils right down to differences between sexes, differences between uh, um, nationalities, ages. Do you think lie detector tests reliably indicate deception?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, is right.
Nope.
Polygraph testing relies on autonomic nervous system arousal. Autonomic, that's that automatic, that's that fight or flight response. We're measuring heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, sweat, which is called the galvanic skin response. The assumption is that if someone's lying, it will produce the autonomic arousal. That's the assumption. But it does not reliably
I mean, that could just
indicate.
be causing nervousness
That's exactly right.
from taking the test, period.
Yep.
That doesn't affect
So,
the test.
why,
Any kind of measure doesn't affect the test, correct?
I'm getting parts of what you're saying, Tosh. I'm just going to type it up. See who else is here. Goku's here. Caleb's here. Everybody's camera's off. All right, let's see. Countermeasures do not affect the test. Countermeasures. Trying to think what countermeasures are. I would think countermeasures are reflecting um, um, questions that people trying to deviate. Test people trying to deviate. So the countermeasures I assume she's referencing are where they have items in the question list pass when they know they're lying. People trying to pass when they know they're lying. Reading what you're writing, Tosh, is almost as bad as trying to hear what you're saying because none of this is making sense yet. Maybe someone else can. Countermeasures do not affect test. People trying to deviate pass when they know they're lying. It's the countermeasures that I don't understand.
there's just ways around it, is what I think she means.
Yeah.
People are actually trained to be able to pass, even if they are lying. There's ways of getting around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we know.
Yeah. I've heard people putting like tacks in their shoes and stuff. So with
Yeah,
polygraph,
other distractions.
yep, yep. Polygraph tests, the validity is highly questionable, and that means does it measure what it's supposed to? So what I mean is when people being tested are trying to hide something, they look online for tricks, but they don't really work, do they? I think some of them might. I think some of them might. Uh, Simply because polygraph tests are junk anyway. So the validity, and this is what we're talking about, the validity of the polygraph tests. Um, when we're talking about validity, we're saying, is it measuring what it's supposed to? You're measuring autonomic arousal. You're measuring heart rate. You're not necessarily measuring lying or deviance, or you know what I mean. It's inadmissible in courts in about half of the states in the U.S. Many government agencies continue to use them, though, in the hopes that guilty people will confess if they think they failed the test. So it's still often used,
Hmm.
but it's not like they can use it as evidence. They're just hoping that maybe someone will go, "I failed. Yeah, do you want to tell us something now?" And then they'll confess. No, has nothing to do with the polygraph itself. How you feeling? Better? Good. Kind of. Appraisals. The beliefs, perceptions, expectations, and judgments that are involved in emotions. So, for example, how one reacts to an event depends on how the person explains it. If you look at that picture, you have the bloke in the middle. He's the gold medal winner. He's happy. Look at the bronze to his left, our right. That's the third place. Look how happy he is. Look at the second place winner, though. He don't look so happy, does he? Right? Because of the way he's appraised the situation. He was one away, meaning he came in second, and how he views second led him to be unhappy. The other person who came in third, who did worse than the person second, is happier just being up there. I almost didn't make it. I'm two away from first. Where the second place is one away. So it's about how we appraise the situation, how we label the experience that'll determine ultimately our emotion. Did you have breakfast? You want breakfast? All right, I'm almost done. Yeah, I know. This is what it's like when you guys are in school every day. Yeah, I know. We all spread out. I know. So my 7-year-old and my 9-year-old daughters stayed home from school today because they have some stomach bug or something. And if you send your kid to school and they go, "Oh, your kid's got a headache," or "Your kid's got this," you have to have them get tested. And we've already had Dylan tested, what, 3 times? So my wife's like, "Not today, not both of them, not today." So rather than have them just bounce right back, home and then to a doctor so they can go back to school eventually. Anyway, long story short, my wife's upstairs in our bedroom teaching. My 14-year-old daughter's in her room taking a class. My 13-year-old son is in his room taking a class. I'm in the living room downstairs teaching. And then my 9 and my 7-year-old are like, "Why is everybody on a computer?" But, all right, that's it. I don't want to go any farther than that because I'm going to start with the question you'll see on Wednesday. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Bob.
On this exam, I expect a 100, no matter how I got to get it.
Okay.
So
All right.
I want to be the guy smiling,
Yeah,
not the guy
right,
faking
right.
the smile.
Hey,
You understand?
Yeah, I got you. You're moving up though, right? Every exam. Let me see something here. Let me see. Yeah, every exam, Bob, you've gone up. So you just might do that. Okay.
I'm getting worse and worse, Bob, so you're good.